So walking into Combatants Will Be Dispatched, I had a feeling it was going to make me laugh and have a really good time. The story is coming from the author of Konosuba, and if I'm understanding correctly, this series was actually written before Konosuba was even a web novel, and you can definitely tell where the inspirations for characters like Megami would have come from simple ideas of our man just shouting explosion and everyone just kinda deadpan saying, he's really an idiot, isn't he? This is a show that I think is best summed down to as it's kind of like Konosuba humor meets a sci-fi setting. Despite the world that they invade being medieval with magic and what you expect, there's a lot of sci-fi elements at play, especially considering that the two characters we're following are part of an evil organization who, the more evil deeds you do, the more evil points you get, which then you can spend to become more and more evil, or in the case of Agent 6, he buys porn mags and he's just a delinquent. You have Alice, this robot android, who is basically a lolly with a shotgun. She's honestly the most rational one out of the crew, it seems like. We get introduced to Snow in this episode, who she just wants money and fame, and honestly, kind of was dealt the worst hand ever when she goes from, just trying to bring in people who maybe will be able to help her get more powerful. She's now having to serve under them after our man sets the password to something a little vulgar for them to get water. This show is so fun. And I think sometimes when you see like a big name, and there's a lot of big names coming into this season. You got the ReZero author, you got the Cautious Hero author, you have obviously Konosuba. There's a lot of people getting their other projects adapted that have already had explosive hits with other series they've worked on, or they're co-writing or writing something original for this season. And sometimes you look at it and you say, okay, we're checking it out simply because there's a name that we recognize behind it. But I think sometimes you watch it and you say, oh, it's fine, it's good, but it doesn't live up to the Konosubas, it doesn't live up to the ReZeros, so to speak, right? And this is a show that I think, honestly, I walked in saying, okay, realistically, is this show going to make me laugh and feel as refreshed as Konosuba did in the first episode? Probably not, but there's a good potential for this to be something that sticks out as Combatants Will Be Dispatched, and not just a Konosuba clone. And honestly, they did a great job. JC's staff and the over-exaggerated reactions, I think that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about Konosuba's adaptation was there was a lot of ridiculous body reactions, the way the bodies moved. It was sloppy line work at times to give it this more exaggerated feel. Honestly, this show does a great job, especially with Agent 6 and how he goes from Joey Wheeler getting all upset to just, he's a horny bastard at times. And I especially love how the dynamics between the characters are very similar to the enjoyment I had when I watched the Konosuba cast. It was just so fun watching a different perspective of essentially you're invading a world to take over and you're watching the villains of the story. The people who are good in this world have no idea the delinquents that have been hired for them. And I think that's a really engaging premise because you're so used to isekais and things like that, saving the world, this or that. And instead you kick off the episode with a bunch of cosplayers saying, we're going to do this or that. Agent 6 is saying, let's talk about our parents. And you're like, okay, are they even serious here? Are they just pretending to play around? And then you see them get actually teleported, and it's really hilarious for that alone. I think the comedy has a good balance of having just simple dark humor to having just general vulgar humor to having a lot of reminiscent feelings of those interactions where one character is super serious and another is being just balls to the walls, what the hell is wrong with you? How could anyone take you seriously? And then you pull away from the exaggerated reaction and you see a bunch of characters looking at them being like, you're such an idiot, how do you even put up with this? I love the idea of when they first get into this world, how pretty much they're shit out of luck, they're fighting these people. Our man Agent 6 here, he's kind of getting overrun. And she's like, hey, if you give me a shotgun, I'll help you out. And then, she blasts these bastards away with a shotgun. And she uses her, lolly kind of innocent child act to manipulate a situation that could have been very bad for them. I mean, they literally look outerworldly. You have medieval soldiers here saying, name what's going on, who are you? And she's saying, he's actually kind of insane, we're on a journey to help his mental sanity. And you're just you can just see the number of possibilities. Because I honestly think the thing that a lot of people really enjoy about Konosuba, despite them honestly being assholes to each other, they also have a sort of friendship. But it's really interesting because when one character attacks another, the other characters will join in with the attacker. But then when it gets flipped around, it's pretty much whoever is being attacked gets just stomped on by all the other characters, and you see that at multiple points in this episode. You have Agent 6 constantly being attacked by these two girls, Snow and Alice, but then sometimes Agent 6 will be attacking Snow, and then obviously, I mean, as we see at the end of the episode, Alice is saying, you know, he's your superior, you best get in line, bitch, and I'm like, okay, this show is going to be hilarious. I think the thing that has me most intrigued is where the crossover plot lines are going to go, because essentially, we have where they started out and their mission, but now we're helping this kingdom. At one point, are we going to watch these two characters full on betray this kingdom, or are they going to have a change of heart, which then will cause issues back home? There's a lot of ways for this to go really, really funny and just kind of twisted, and I'm really excited for that reason alone. I mean, this show just had a lot of fun, clearly. It had a very similar bounce to the overall exaggerated reactions of a lot of my favorite comedy anime, including Konosuba. To be honest, I love the idea of having two very different protagonists. You have someone who's constantly having these ridiculous reactions that make them look like a tool, to the pretty much serious deadpan, and then at times, you know, she's seriously just a girl with a shotgun and you don't want to cross her. It provides a lot of interesting dynamics, and seriously, the story seems interesting. A good comedy necessarily doesn't need a story. You can just have really good slice of life interactions and just kind of like the daily adventures or the daily quests that they take on, and it can be a really fun just story for that alone, because you have the characters to make the humor work, and the setting can just kind of like build upon that story. But to have a story like this actually kick off with a narrative that seems like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. You're twisting what we typically see with going to other world stories, but then you still have that same level of humor with these characters, and so far they have a nice solid cast of characters without bloating it too much. Sure, there's the king, and then there's the princess, then there's the high command warrior Snow, and then we have our two centrals here, right? But it doesn't feel like they threw us into a cast of 12 characters and we're just gonna go on a big adventure like that. It feels like we want to get to know the like central characters before we expand it too much, and I think that's a great job and a great way to make you really appreciate these characters and probably see them as shitty people more often than not, and that's gonna be pretty fun. I love how everyone has their own way of being dramatic. The princess has that kind of like fiery anime rage. You have someone like Snow who is just that standard, like you can tell she's scheming. Honestly, kind of gave me a similar feeling of Darkness, just without the sexual perversions. She's more about the money and power. And then obviously, you know, the whole delinquent, sexual deviant, and just the kind of casual shotgun lolly. There's just so much fun with this show, and I think a lot of people are going to have fun, whether they're fans of Konosuba, whether they just like comedy anime. Sure, if you're not a fan of crude humor, this might not be for you because there's clearly going to be a lot of it. But personally for me, this is definitely a fun comedy, and there's a couple of good ones seemingly coming out this season, and I think if we want to laugh this anime season, spring 2021 is surely going to be able to do so for us. I'd love to know everyone's thoughts and feelings, and who's your current favorite character in this show. Agent 6 so far is mine. I love the idea of this guy, even if I wouldn't personally want to be friends with him. Let me know your feelings down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy and new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.